Hello and welcome to another episode here in the post-production part of the texture series. As the title said already, we want to talk here a little bit about the depth map or the creation of such, and for that we have different methods. One would be just to take here the black and white filter on top, because most of the time with brick walls, for example, we have different colors in the material, and these materials have then a different distance to each other. That would be one way to create a map, so to say. Another one is to just take here some colors, and these colors becomes added with the eyedropper plus, and then we can add some fuzziness to get more of the values in one step, and then we get here as well a black and white map here. And that is then usable in displacement. Of course, we have some problems here. Not always is everything so easily adjustable as we want to. And so we can just go here ahead with a little brush and fix maybe some spots here. And sometimes the colors of the foreground elements are pretty much in the same way like the background elements. And then we have nearly no luck. And that will be then discussed in the major part here, in the second part. But before I do that, I want to go a little bit more into our little magic box here and try to find different methods here. Okay, save the selection to have that data always available, because sometimes we can also combine 2 or 3 methods at once. And when we fix always the easy part and everything, maybe we get even a new solution. Every case is different, and of course adjustments. I like curves for that, and I wouldn't go so far to give that a real harsh edge. I would go always with some blurriness. And Gaussian blur here, for example, is a good idea because bump maps love this, and the displacement map is much happier with that. Always check for tileable textures if we have on the borders not created a new problem. So calculation is one method where we take the red and the green channel, for example, and check out which mathematical method works here the best, because these channels are also different, and then we can subtract them, divide them, or whatever. And this is always dependent on the material that you have in the texture in the first place. So there's not one and only method. And so here we have already something, again, adjustments, and here we see the histogram. So we have to move this to the side, pull a little bit here, pull a little bit there. I play here around to give you an idea how far we can go. And the more detail you have, the more movement in a set you will have finally. And when it's just black and white, it's maybe nearly not usable for bump mapping anymore, but it's certainly usable for anything that we can then take into sub-polygon displacement. And here again the little fix. I do this here very sloppily just to give you an idea. A little bit more or less opacity and then go to work. Certainly helps here to give the illusion that we have a real material. And speaking of illusion, let's hop over to Cinema 4D and check out what we got here. I have prepared here already material and a cube, and the cube itself has a lot of polygons already, so the sub-polygon displacement has already a lot of material to work with. And I have here 2 different light situations. One is very nice, the other one is maybe not so nice, so just for the comparison here. And I adjust here, of course, the height value. But the more we go here forward in our theme, the more we will see that the height value is really an important part in the whole equation. But first, let's check out when we have nothing here really to key, to calculate, or just to pull a key, whatever, when we have to go really manual, because all these colors are so similar, and we can't just use here this map and turn it into black and white, because all these values here are not really based on the height. So what I do here is, first of all, because it's a tileable texture again, I take here every stone in the middle field that isn't touching the borders here. So I create a mask, and as we can see, I use here a soft brush. That means the bucket fills it not completely, it stops where the brush is a little bit fuzzy, and I go normally one time around. It's very fast, and here I like the fast mask because I can then just with black delete it, so it's always pressing the X key and you are done. The brush by itself has a little bit dynamic in it and scattering and all of that, to have not that super artificial straight line here, and of course a little bit blurry, and then just get rid of that little seam. There are other methods to do this. For example, take the pen tool with a very hard edge that paints even faster. Then the bucket will work easily and then blur the whole thing. But the idea here is, of course, to have an eye on it and have maybe some zen moments in the day. And this painting here is really relaxing. You need, of course, first to save all of this, and then we have to fix here the little seams. The zen moment continues here. But in the moment we are done, we can take this new selection here and apply this to a copy of the whole texture, and then fill the areas that we have already done. And with this information we can go now into offset and find a position where we get all the other stones without cutting into these stones. I hope I get here away with 2 passes instead of 3. Should be normally possible, but sometimes it isn't. And so I think this position is here nice. I have marked the numbers into the layer file in case I forget them or whatever. And then I can start here again to paint over these guys. And this is, of course, again done with the brush and with some dynamics in it. I fill these areas, and then I fit here everything together with one time going around. Okay, so we have to do this here now for the whole thing, and then I have here the option to save this, of course. So I have now both, one as the texture was and one, of course, offsetted, and I have now here 2 layers, and I want to take, of course, now all of this information after I have fixed here the seams as well, and start to create my first depth information on it. That means I want to have now here a mid-gray, even in 16-bit, it's called 127 here. And I load this now here into layers while I use the masks or the selections here. And I've made this shortly a little bit opaque to know where I am. And then I can paint here on this gray just with the dodge and burn tool. And I do this here just one time without a lot of details. And I adjust later on the brush a little bit to show you some variations. And as we will see later on, the more details I bring here in, the more I can maybe even run into trouble. So don't overdo this here. It's maybe nice, but the first test should be always done after a certain amount of time. I want to show this here, of course, how much damage we can do. And with the first part here nearly ready, I want to go, of course, then to show you how we combine all of this. And just to show you here, the second part, just re-offset, and here we go. So now everything fits together. And we have no seams from the tiling because we have avoided to work over the borders. And with a darker gray, we can work now on the background. And it's of course up to you if the background is white or the background is black or darker. And I offset this here just rapidly and randomly because I don't want to have any seams here in it. And I look from time to time how the real background was, if there are some holes or something, and I go here a little bit crazy with some dots and so on. That is of course dependent on your taste and how much time you have always for such things. And again, don't go too detailed into the game here, because it's always easy to overdo it with displacement. And my tip is always to keep this on different layers. I have merged this here, but in the moment you merge it, you have no access to these separate parts anymore. So what I do here is just for the sake of speed, but it has maybe some downsides. What I do here is a cheap trick, and I just take all the color out of this layer, and then I take here the opacity down, and I mix a little bit from the original picture inside of my devs map. And finally I get to Cinema 4D again, and here I want to test of course what I have done with all my details here. And so I place the different layers into displacement, into color, and my first test is of course, yeah, I can see something, but okay, so let's increase the height to an extreme value and check out the blur. It's pretty boxy, so it's not really nice. If you want to blur, then please use Photoshop for that. It has much better options to blur things. What we need to understand here is, of course, when we work with displacement and have the height adjusted and then increase the tile amount, the height will stay exactly in the same way. That means the more tiles we use and we stick with the height in the same way, the bigger or the more depths finally in ratio to the size the stones have. So we have to adjust always this in the same way, and maybe we can use the percent slider on top of it for that. Before you put too much work into your devs map, always check out different light situations and different scales, of course. Whatever makes your texture work is of course based on camera and light, not only based on the texture itself. So make tests and enjoy. Thanks for listening. Have fun with it. Bye bye.